Most of us, we spend our whole lives turning away. We turn away from the darkness, from anything we decide is impure, and, well, most of all, we turn away from the reality of death. We like to build our worlds in the light, right? We arrange our lives to be clean and orderly and predictable, kind of hoping the shadows will just stay over there. But what if there's a path that does the exact opposite? What if the only way to find a light that casts no shadow is to walk directly into the heart of everything we've been taught to fear? Well, that is the path of Aghora. And on this path, the funeral pyre isn't an ending. It's the very source of a flame of knowledge. The goddess you see here, Shmashan Tara, she isn't some symbol of destruction to be scared of. She actually represents the cosmic power that dances in that very flame. Her home is the Shmashan, the cremation ground, a place most of us would avoid at all costs. But for an Aghori, that place holds the key to absolute freedom. Now, this is not a journey for the faint of heart, for sure, but it's one that tries to answer some of the deepest questions we could ever ask ourselves. I mean, really think about that. How do you find a state of being that's beyond all limitation, beyond fear, beyond even the difference between what we call pure and impure? How do you become so free that the little patterns and reactions of ordinary life just can't bind you anymore? These are the questions that the discipline of Aghora doesn't just ask, it confronts them head on. And to really get the answers it offers, we first have to understand the fundamental problem it's trying to solve. And that problem is us.
And that gets us to the core diagnosis offered by the Aghori Vimalananda, whose wisdom is really our guide through all of this. He suggests that every single one of us is living with an illness. Now, it's not a physical sickness, but something way more fundamental. We are all living inside the tight confines of a limited personality. We think of our personality, our likes, our dislikes, our habits, our beliefs. We think that's who we are. That's our identity. But from this perspective, that identity is actually a prison. It's a set of invisible walls that defines and confines our entire experience of reality.
And right here, these are the very bars of that inner prison. They're known as the 8 snares of existence. Lust, anger, greed, delusion, envy, shame, disgust, and fear. Now, these aren't just feelings that come and go. They are incredibly powerful forces that bind us. They're like the automatic filters that we see the entire world through. They dictate our reactions, they limit what we're able to perceive, and they keep our consciousness trapped in this tiny, predictable loop. The path of Aghora is just a direct, methodical confrontation with every single one of these snares, and it's designed to dissolve them from the root up. So, how do you even begin to break out of this prison? Well, Aghora uses the tools of its parent tradition, Tantra, and it is so crucial to understand what Tantra means in this context. It's not a religion with a bunch of fixed dogmas. Vimalananda describes it as a kind of metapsychology, a really profound science of the mind. And its goal is, well, it's radical. It doesn't want to just give you a better personality or a stronger ego. Its aim is to completely replace that limited temporary personality with one that is unlimited, permanent, and divine. It's a process of complete overhaul. This image of alchemy just perfectly illustrates the whole process. Think of it like a form of spiritual alchemy. The path takes the base metal of our ordinary, limited consciousness, a consciousness that's bound and defined by those 8 snares, and it seeks to transmute it into the pure gold of unlimited, enlightened awareness. It is a journey of profound inner transformation, and it's one that requires some intense and often misunderstood methods to generate the heat you need for that change to happen. Okay, so if that's the goal, this huge, radical transformation, what are the actual tools? How does somebody actually begin to dismantle the prison of their own personality? This brings us to the specific methods that really define this unique spiritual path, which is often called the left-hand path. These are the practices that have given Aghora its fearsome reputation, but if you look at them from the inside, they're actually precise psychological instruments. First off, let's just look at the word itself. It's got this paradox in it that really holds the key to the whole path. Goara means darkness, terrible, the darkness of ignorance. Aghora, then, means the opposite, not dark, not terrible. It means the light, the absence of darkness. So even though the path might lead through what looks like darkness, the ultimate goal is, and always has been, the pure, unfiltered light of awareness. It's all about removing the things that obscure the light, not about embracing darkness for its own sake.
Aghora is a discipline within what's known as the Vama Marga, or the left-hand path. And yeah, this is definitely not a path for everyone. It's described with 3 really powerful words: Shigra, Ugra, and Tivra. Fast, terrible, and intense. It's a path for what Vimalananda calls the heroic temperament, someone who doesn't just tolerate a challenge, but actively embraces intensity, embraces things that society calls impure or shocking, and uses all of that as potent fuel for transformation. And this, of course, brings us to one of the most talked about, most sensationalized rituals, the Panchamakara. But if you look at it through the lens of Aghora, it's not about indulgence at all. It's a profound practice of bhutashuddhi, the purification of the 5 great elements that make up our very being. So, meat, which is taboo for many, is used to master the earth element. Fish, for the water element. Wine, a substance that alters consciousness, is an offering to the inner fire. Parched grain is for air, and the sexual ritual, when it's done not with lust but with total self-identification with the divine, represents the primordial union in ether. The whole point is to confront these powerful energies and harmonize them inside yourself, becoming so balanced that no experience can ever throw you off center again. All right, so to do this kind of intense internal work, you need an equally intense external environment. You need a place that strips away every illusion and forces you to confront the ultimate, non-negotiable reality of existence. And this brings us to the central stage, the open-air laboratory for the Aghori, the cremation ground, the smashan. So why the smashan? What's so special about a cremation ground? Because for a true Aghori, the entire world is eventually seen as one vast cremation ground. Every single person, every plant, every object, including yourself, is already considered to be on the pyre. Because if you're born, death is inevitable. Now, this isn't a morbid or depressing way of looking at things. It's actually a powerful tool for liberation. When you live with this constant, visceral awareness of impermanence, the ego's little anxieties, its attachments to praise, and its fear of blame, they just start to lose their power. They seem so trivial in the face of this great reality. The smashan becomes this laboratory for a very systematic psychological transformation. By choosing to live among corpses and the filth of death that society just shuns, the snare of disgust or repugnance is the first one to go. And once you're no longer repulsed by the physical reality of life and death, you can start to truly understand it. And when you truly understand death, not just as an idea but as a constant presence, you lose the ultimate snare, fear. And once fear is gone, shame has no ground left to stand on. You become free from caring what other people think, because you see how temporary all of their judgments really are. The bars of the prison are broken, one by one. But if we stop here, if we only see Aghora as this series of intense, kind of scary practices, we're missing the whole point. We're missing it entirely. The methods are just the vehicle. The destination, the true purpose of this difficult path, is something else altogether. It's the emotional and spiritual core of the entire journey, a revelation that reframes everything that came before. And this is the heart of the path. The goal of all this intensity isn't to gain dark powers or to reject the world in some state of nihilism. The true aim is to cultivate a love for the Divine Mother, that cosmic creative energy, the goddess Shakti, a love so profound and so overwhelming that it just consumes the practitioner's limited self entirely. All the rituals, all the discipline, all the confrontation with fear are ultimately just offerings to her. And Vimalananda had this beautiful way of explaining why this approach is so wise and so safe, really. He said other relationships can be conditional. A friend might fail you, a partner might argue with you, but a mother's love for her child is unconditional. By choosing to see the entire universe, all of cosmic energy as your own mother, you place yourself in a state of total surrender and trust. You basically sit in her lap and you let her take care of everything. And this brings us right back to that fearsome image of Smashan Tara. Her whole appearance, it's like a test of your perception. If you come to her with fear in your heart, she will reflect that fear right back at you, becoming terrifying. She becomes the embodiment of all your unresolved darkness. But if you can see past that external form and approach her with the simple, devotional love of a child for its mother, her whole nature transforms. Her terrifying aspect just melts away, and she becomes the most loving, protective force imaginable. What look like weapons are actually her gifts of liberation. That skull she holds, it's all about destroying the ego's limitations, the death of the small self. The noose isn't for you, it's the very one she's taken from Yama, the Lord of Death, granting you fearlessness and immortality. The scissors are there to cut the deep karmic knots that bind you to endless cycles of suffering, and the sword?
That sort of knowledge destroys your most persistent enemy, your own self-doubt. Every single terrifying attribute is actually a tool for your ultimate freedom. So, after all that, after this journey through darkness, confronting death, and transmuting fear into love, what's left? How does this esoteric wisdom actually translate into a life lived in the ordinary world? This is where the path reveals its most beautiful and practical truths. It shows that the goal was never to leave the world, but to finally learn how to live in it fully. I think the most important thing to get here is that the true state of an Aghori is completely internal. It's not about wearing skulls or smearing ash on yourself. Vimalananda himself lived a totally ordinary life in a Bombay flat. He dressed normally, he ran businesses, he interacted with the world. The transformation, the freedom, the fearlessness, it all happens on the inside. It's a state of being, not some outward identity you have to perform. The greatest Aghoris are often completely invisible. So what does that look like on the outside? Well, it comes out as this really unique and profound kind of love. And Aghori's love, as Vimalananda describes it, sees beyond the surface. It doesn't love a person for the skin and bones they are right now, but for the divine potential, that spark of gold that's lying dormant inside them. It's a love that sees what a person can become, and in seeing it, it helps to call it forward. It is a love without judgment and without any conditions. And in the end, Vimalananda boils this entire vast philosophy down to 3 really simple, really human questions you can ask yourself at the end of each day. First, have I lived? Meaning, have I actually made the best use of my time to grow, to learn, to move closer to my potential? Second, have I loved? Have I reached out and eased the burdens of others? Have I expressed that unconditional care? And third, have I laughed? Have I been able to see the humor and the lightness, even in painful moments, to not take my limited self so seriously? If the answer to any of those is no, well, it's a day not lived to its fullest. And so we arrive at the final resolution of this incredible paradox. The path of Aghora, the one that embraces impurity and death and darkness, it doesn't lead to becoming something inhuman or monstrous. By confronting everything we are built to avoid, by dissolving the fears that limit us, one simply and finally learns what it means to be fully, fearlessly, and lovingly human. The journey through the smashan isn't an escape from life. It is a direct path to its very heart.